Welcome to lesson 1 on the user interface and using the ZoomInPan commands for AutoCAD 2012. The first thing that we want to do after we open AutoCAD, which could be found on your desktop or from the start menu, which was shown in the previous tutorial, is we want to switch the user interface, or UI for short, to the AutoCAD Classic layout. Before we do that, I want to kind of cover some of the basics of this user interface in case you decide to use this one. Some of the terminology related to this interface is this is similar to Microsoft Word or Office 2007 or 2010, where instead of having your standard menus and toolbars, all of the tools that are commonly used are laid out in what's called each one of these that I'm clicking on right now is called a different tab. Every time I click on a different tab, it brings up a ribbon of different tools, and each one of these little sections here is called a tool palette, and underneath the tool palette is the title for which tools are contained in that palette. So in the home palette, you'll find the draw toolbar, which contains some of the main tools for drawing things like lines and circles, then the modify, which is used for moving, things like moving, rotating, copying and pasting, resizing, and so on and so forth. And if you were to click on this little down button below here, you'll find more tools that are not displayed in this common palette. Of course, this can be customized and moved around to the way that suits you the best. Same thing under the draw toolbar here. You'll find more drawing tools that you'll be learning about as we go through the tutorials. The big button here on the top left, which is the A or AutoCAD button, that contains your common commands like open, save, save as, and print. We'll be going through those as we go through the tutorials once again. So again, it's similar to the file menu button. This contains your common commands, such as that. Down here at the bottom, we have something called a command line. The command line is used, as the name states, for entering commands into AutoCAD. You have two options for how to execute a command. Like a simple command would be something like drawing a line. You can physically click on the command like I'm doing right now and use it as necessary, or you can also enter a command, type a command into the command prompt to activate it. So simply to draw a line, I can type in the line command, and it does the same thing as if I were to click on the line command in the draw tool palette here. Down here at the bottom, you have what's called the status bar. This gives you a couple pieces of information. On the bottom left here is your coordinates. Okay. Notice as I move the cursor to the right, the X coordinate, which is the first coordinate there, is increasing. As I go to the left, it's decreasing. The closer and closer I get to this XY, it gets closer and closer to 0. This XY mark here is considered the origin. That's like your 0, 0, with the same principle as if you were graphing. And also as I go up, the second coordinate, which is the Y coordinate, is increasing as well. Notice this third coordinate here is always staying at 0. The way our drawing is set up right now is that we're only drawing in a two-dimensional work plane. If we were working in 3 dimensions, which we do in Architecture 2 and 3, and some of you might get to it at the end of Architecture 1, we use all 3 coordinates. But for the purposes of this class, and for most of our drawings, we'll just be working with the XY coordinate plane. If you wanted to view all the coordinates, you can use this view cube here to manipulate the view by clicking on the different views. Now we're in a 3-dimensional plane. Okay, and you can see this in a 3-dimensional layout. Of course, the real world is all 3-dimensional. We're only going to work 2D, so we're going to stick with this top view here for our view purposes. For most drawings in this class, we're not going to need this, so we're going to turn this off. In order to do that, we can go to the command prompt here and type in this command called navcube display. Look carefully how I spell it. And 2 V's, cube, and then notice as I'm typing, this little box pops up here with common commands. So in this case here, I want to click on the navcube display, and right now the value is set to 3, which means that it's on, and 3 And in 3D, we want to set it to 0, which is going to turn it off. So type in 0, enter, and now notice that the nav cube disappeared from the screen. We no longer need that, and we just temporarily turned it off. If we wanted to turn it back on, we could simply type in the same command, nav cube display again, and enter a 3 or another value depending on how we wanted to have that oriented. So again, this is the common layout for this new interface with the tool palettes and like I've described before. In the previous tutorial, I mentioned that we're going to switch the user interface or UI to the kind of AutoCAD Classic with the standard tool menus, which is similar to looks like an older version. Again, it has the same functionality, but it looks just slightly different. And the reason we're switching that is because if you look at the tutorials, the PDF tutorials, all those are laid out following the AutoCAD Classic layout. So simply to change this, there's a drop-down menu up here that says Drafting and Annotation. We click the down arrow on this, and we switch this to AutoCAD Classic. Then this will switch our user interface to a different layout. Again, we have the same functionality here. However, now we just have a new layout, and this works the same way. Now what I want to get into is how to use the zoom and pan commands within the AutoCAD program. The way we're going to do that simply is we're going to open a sample file that we're going to use to practice some of these commands. So we're just going to simply click on the Open button here. We can also go File, Open. I'm going to click on the Open here, and we're going to browse to the share drive where this file is stored. So I'm going to go to my computer here, go to the share drive, high school folder, Tornagard. We're going to go to Architecture 1, and then AutoCAD Lessons. And then here we should find tutorial files, and here's where you'll find all the files associated with these tutorials. This tutorial we're going to use this Wilhelm file, 01 Wilhelm, so you can simply double click that to open it, and that'll open up this new file called Wilhelm. This looks like looks rather complex while you're looking at it, but this is kind of, as the year goes on, this is something that you'll be, not this specific house, but this is an example of a floor plan of a house, and this is kind of like what you'll be doing for your dream home design. So nevertheless, the purpose of this part of the tutorial is to show you how to use the zoom and pan commands. This is the second tutorial, I believe, of the PDF series. So again, just to reiterate, this tutorial, lesson 1, and the video tutorials has the first 2 tutorials combined, which is the user interface and the zoom and pan commands. So if you want to zoom in on a part of a drawing, the easiest way to do it is to use the scroll wheel on the mouse. All the zooming and panning is done with the scroll wheel. So if I wanted to zoom in on this kitchen elevation view here, simply all I do is hover the mouse over the area I want to zoom in on, use the scroll wheel on the mouse, and roll in. If I want to zoom out anywhere on the screen, I can just simply roll out. I want to zoom in on another part, roll in, and then roll out. If my screen is zoomed in real far, such as this, or zoomed out real far, if I simply double click the scroll wheel, again double click the scroll wheel, it should take everything that's on your screen and auto zoom it to fit the screen you're looking at. That works if you're zoomed in or zoomed out. It'll auto fit everything to your screen. Now if you have a line that's really, really big and a line that's really, really small, and you auto zoom, it's going to be very difficult to find that given line, which you'll see in the next tutorial. To pan simply means moving the screen left or right or up and down. One way to do it is to use these scroll bars on the horizontally and vertically. You can do this, however, it usually takes a lot more time. The simplest way to do it and the quickest shortcut is again with the scroll wheel. This time if you click and hold, you'll see the cursor turns into a hand, and now you can simply drag your drawing, and you can do it repeatedly to move it several times any which direction you want. And if you want to zoom out, you can roll out, or again double click to auto zoom. Once you've finished that concludes the tutorial. One last time, again, I have this view cube turned on. Typically I want to turn it off, so you can do that by typing in the nav cube display command, And again, if you start typing, you don't have to be in the command prompt to type. If you start typing anywhere,